SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
If you're feeling anxious about your investments with all the economic volatility and chaos in Washington, tune in to SuperTalk Jackson on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. and Sundays from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. for Element Wealth Radio with Jeremy Nelson. Learn more at myelementwealth.com.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Hump Day.
Well, we've made it to the old middle of the week. It's July and it's still hot outside. By the way, in case you haven't noticed, shout out to Scary Gary. He repaired my headset after the show yesterday. Hopefully that'll work, Rhino. So we noticed you guys may have as well a little feedback on our broadcast coming from my mic, and we think it's because my headset was leaking sound because the old ear pads just wear out after a while. So it turns out that Scary Gary had a spare set that happens to fit my model brand of headset. And
the last set of spares.
That's right. So he was kind enough to do a little repair after the show. So we're all good to go. We're watching the Democrats in an identity crisis right now. AOC, the socialist firebrand, Sandy from Westchester, of course. You ever been to Westchester? It's one of the most affluent areas in the world. I was about to say, I don't think I can afford it. It's really something, Westchester. Sandy from Westchester. I can't take credit for that. That's what Tucker Carlson always referred to her as. But she plays, this, I'm just Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from the Bronx. No, you're not. You're Sandy from Westchester. People in the Bronx could only dream of having the lifestyle you had as a youngster there in Westchester. And that's not a bad thing, but be who you dang are. I'm so sick of these politicians pretending to be people they're not. Shouldn't you start with just being genuine? How could you trust someone who comes out like that and just creates this whole personality, this whole almost caricature character? That's not who she is.
They have to avoid any appearance of privilege.
Oh, I see.
It's a scary word on the left.
Well, you're so right about that. She is encouraging her fellow New York City residents to get behind the self-avowed socialist, really a card-carrying communist, Zoran Mamdani. Chuck Schumer, he's clueless. He's already endorsed him. You've seen this. And President Trump yesterday said it's not over because this nutcase kook communist Mamdani is leading in all the polls in New York City. And the president said it's not over. He didn't come out and endorse Cuomo, former mayor, who is now running as an independent, by the way. He's decided he's going to stay in there. But he did say, yeah, I think Andrew has a chance to win. How about that? So
I don't see it.
I don't either. But he's in there still. Says he's going to stay in there. I just don't know. We'll see. It's disturbing, though, that some guy can get such support. And folks just, hey, by the way, I said Cuomo was mayor, governor, pardon me. So now running for mayor, of course, was defeated soundly in the race, the Democratic primary there in New York City. But he has reemerged as an independent candidate. So let me get this straight. You got two independents, a Republican and the Democrat nominee, Zoran Mamdani. Curtis, Sliva, Guardian Angels guy, he's the Republican candidate. Cuomo, the independent, and the current mayor, Eric Adams, also running as an independent for re-election as the incumbent.
Yeah, the whole compassionate conservative W 2.0 kind of vibe that Red Beret dude gives off isn't how he's going to get a Republican elected in New York.
It's not very good. I totally agree.
You'd have to have somebody closer. Like you probably couldn't go full Trump.
Right.
But you'd have to have somebody closer to that to have a chance.
Yeah, I think so. I just don't.
Someone that's willing to say what's on their mind, not going to couch it in niceties, not going to be overt with their do-goodery.
It's I think it's clear that Mr. Sliva, he just really doesn't.
It's nothing against him as a dude. He
right.
seems to be like a genuinely good dude.
And
just that's not really palatable for the average New Yorker, it seems.
You want to get votes, you gotta stoke the emotions. You gotta have some excitement and
They don't
charisma.
want a nice guy. They want somebody with some edge.
That's right. And he does not possess that.
Whether that be political edge or physical edge,
right.
where they look imposing,
right.
or they come across like something that doesn't make you look like a pushover.
That's right. I think, maybe 30 years ago, he would have had a chance. Yeah, when the Guardian Angels was all the rage, big thing, and New York was being cleaned up at the time, and it was in dire condition. From Rudy Giuliani came in, of course, and just turned everything upside down in a positive way in New York City. I mean, there was a time, it's bad now, but I remember traveling there and was, receiving all these warnings. Don't go here, don't go there, watch this, watch that. It was really bad. And Giuliani came in, I went like a year after he was in office, and it was just totally different. I mean, the streets, people all over the place. And in New York City, 1 o'clock in the morning, people are still all over the streets. And a lot of the shops and stuff are still open because there's potential buyers there.
And Giuliani's an example of somebody who didn't have necessarily a physical edge, but he had a political edge.
That's right.
He was willing to undercut you, pull the rug out from under you, go behind your back if you went against him.
Well, and he bucked the status quo. And I think that was powerful. But, yeah, so maybe on the heels of that, just thinking out loud, Curtis Sliva, the Guardian Angels guys, I mean, maybe he could have done something. But I think now that I just feel like that time has passed. And it's kind of passed him up as well. Nonetheless, though, that's what we're stuck with. And I would say the Democrats have a big old problem on their hand because I don't think the likes of Mamdani and his policies and his plans and his vision and his values are going to sell nationally. But they're having a hard time, are they not, detaching themselves from him as the Democrat Party nominee.
Well, it doesn't
for the
help
largest
their
city in
cause
America.
that they have video evidence of a pretty sizable chunk of the National Democrat Party espousing the same things he espouses, just not to a certain extent.
I completely
or not to
agree.
the same degree.
And something I've had you play on the show here before, you maybe think about it, it was from the 2012 Democrat National Committee, National Convention, 2012. And Peter Schiff, who nobody really recognized. He's an accomplished journalist and business person. He was roaming around with a mic and posing questions to delegates. And one of the questions was,
It's also before that became an entire genre of online video.
That's true.
The undercover gotcha video.
That you're right about that, which is huge now. So,
well, it got huge. It's dying down because people got wise.
Okay. Well, I still see them come across my feed, so maybe I'm jaded a little bit in my thoughts that it might be still big. Admit that I'm not on like the young folks are. I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram and TikTok, where most video, I guess, is consumed. I'm on the baby boomer Facebook, as they say, more than anything. But the question was, Peter Schiff says, what do you think about banning profit? And he asked that of several of the delegates. I may get you to pull it up. Yeah, ban profit. I'm all for that. Now, this was 2012. This was 13 years ago. So I guess maybe that is taking hold and manifesting itself in the form of the Democrat candidate for mayor. And you're right. So many agree with him. We're stepping aside for a break, just getting started in the Element Wealth studio on this hump day. Jim Leggette, lecturer of economics at Mississippi State at 10:35.
Dr. Michael Carter.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about or planning for a retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. The C Spire text line, it's wide open, 601-879-4395. Of course, the Sports Talk team is still at SEC Media Days. And once again today, it's Mississippi State, Florida, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Still seems kind of weird, Rhino, to mention Oklahoma and Texas among the SEC teams. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that. This, of course...
I mean, there were diehard folks that refused to acknowledge Arkansas.
That's true. And that was a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, the broadcast, Sports Talk Mississippi at SEC Media Days, it is brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Trustmark Bank, Cannon Ford, Lincoln and Starkville, Cleveland and Pascagoula, Covington County Hospital, Mississippi Farm Bureau, and Gentile Apparel. So, the president was in Pittsburgh yesterday. We were talking to you about that during the show. It was a big summit, Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit. The spearheaded this event by Senator Dave McCormick, and the senator announced $91 billion of new investment in the Keystone State in western Pennsylvania, new energy production, new data centers. The president said it is imperative that the United States be the world's dominant superpower player in artificial intelligence. And he also acknowledges that requires electricity and power. And while we're way ahead, and the president said that yesterday, of I believe, our most ardent foe and threat, China, in artificial intelligence, you know where we're lagging them is in creation and standing up of new electric power generation facilities. they're going gangbusters in China. They're ahead of us in that respect. Lots of build-out going on, no doubt, in this country, including right here in the great state of Mississippi. We had, of course, the CEO of Entergy, Haley Forsackerly, on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about the major investment Entergy is making in Mississippi to power the new data center projects under construction in the Magnolia State. This is exciting. There's more to come, however, and we need more, and the president acknowledged that. So it's good to see that, start thinking about this, Rhino. This is a rhetorical question to a great extent, but would the prior president even have a clue and be able to conduct a conversation on this subject matter? I don't feel like it.
With a teleprompter, possibly.
Oh, Lord. Well, I don't want a teleprompter president. I think most people said they're about sick of that. What do we have? A teleprompter and an auto pen. That pretty much was the president for 4 years. So, but this president...
And the short stairs.
Exactly. This president acknowledges the opportunity and the need. And I think that's really cool. And industry responds. You know that. When you see the leader of the country in the White House say, yeah, I'm about this. I support this. This is good. This is the direction the country needs to go on. This is critical strategy, critical to our future from a national security perspective and an economic perspective. And you hear that messaging coming from the commander-in-chief, you're just more likely to go out and make investments, take risk, and act. But when you hear somebody say, we're killing fossil fuels, well, naturally, you're not likely to make investments in fossil fuels. And it turns out we need fossil fuels to produce electricity to power our AI future. I know that's second-order thinking, I guess, sad as it may be. But this was cool that the president was there and sending that message. Google, in the meantime, announced $25 billion of more investments in data centers. Oracle, this is the one to keep an eye on, folks. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is how they brand their cloud services, OCI. They have 100 data centers under construction in this country. So Oracle started out as a software company, really commercialized the technology known as relational database. And then they carried that further into building what we call back in those days client-server-based application software. And then they got into the, instead of just the system software, the underlying software tools on which applications would be built. That's kind of how Oracle started. Databases, client-server environments, database administration and management, deployment tools. And then they got into the application software business and acquired some companies in that respect. One of them was a company called J.D. Edwards, interesting company that started out in Denver and built software for the manufacturing industry, production control and management solutions on IBM platforms, and then converted it to relational database technology with Oracle. And then Oracle acquired them, became Oracle J.D. Edwards. One World, it was the branding. So this is exciting. Oracle announced a couple of weeks ago, it's worth pointing out again, that they have a single contract, single cloud services contract valued at $30 billion a year. Now, the company's only doing about $12 billion right now annually in their cloud services. $30 billion, one deal. You think that salesperson did pretty good there? Of course, it was an army of people involved in something of that magnitude. But still, that's pretty neat to hear a one deal, man. And I know the left melts down over that because a lot of people are going to get rich off of it, right? Because of the value these services will provide, such that we're willing to pay you, Mr. Oracle, $2.5 billion. They didn't disclose the client. at this point. We're willing to write you a check for $2.5 billion a month for the services. And you know that the company doing that knows what the heck they're doing. These aren't idiots that do this sort of stuff. You don't get to a point where you could even engage in a $2.5 billion a month deal unless you know what you're doing. So it's pretty neat. It's just super exciting. And the president understands the priority in this country to stay above the fray and to outpace our rival on the global stage, which is China in this regard. No doubt. On the spending side, you know, we had a $9.4 billion rescissions package. Passed the House, transferred according to the Rhino procession protocol and standards down to the Senate in the U.S. Capitol. It's a little longer walk in the U.S. Capitol than it is.
Yeah, they got jetpacks. They got a bigger budget.
And it's been sitting in the Senate now for what, a month, 6 weeks, as the senators have been deliberating. And it's $9.4 billion. Now, most of this was stuff that was recommended by numerous Republicans in the Congress, especially on the House side, and of course some of the stuff that the Doge team exposed. I'm not going to say discovered. They knew about it. I just think Doge called attention to it. And that includes a lot of the USAID funding after we found out, wait, the vast majority of that really isn't going to feed hungry people in the impoverished regions of the earth. That's not where it was going. It was lining the pockets of a bunch of these elite, wealthy NGOs that are just scam artists. Oh, there's government money. That's a slush fund. Let me line up for that. So also included in this bill, by the way, are...
Didn't somebody claim it paid for Chelsea Clinton's wedding?
I heard that. I'm not sure if that's true, but the big thing was backing down on much of the funding, if not full elimination of the funding for NPR and PBS, which honestly is more focused on denouncing and condemning this great country from which they get money that I guarantee you flows into the Treasury from a lot of people, such as myself, that don't support a dang thing they promote in their broadcasting. And so that's being knocked down as well. This is $9.4 billion. You mean we're struggling to get $9.4 billion cut out of $7 trillion? Okay, we're coming right back with Jim Leggette from Mississippi State University.
From the Siebert. Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Try to be best, cause you're only a man, and a man's got to learn to take it. Try to believe, though the going gets rough, that you gotta hang tough to make it. History repeats itself, try and you succeed. Never doubt that you're the one, and you can have your dream. You're the best around. Nothing's going
I believe that's from the old Karate Kid, isn't it there, Rhino?
It was on the soundtrack, yeah.
We welcome now Jim Leggette, lecturer of economics at Mississippi State University. Hey, Jim, good to see you. Turn your mic on there, Jim.
No, you're good.
We got it? Okay. We got it?
I'm good.
We got it, yeah. Hey, man.
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you guys? You guys finding a way to stay cool?
Man, it's hot down here.
I'm talking about your personalities.
We expect that, of course, in July in Mississippi, so we should not be shocked. We're just analyzing the current state of the economy. The markets seem to be confused, I would say. That is kind of the way you would describe economic conditions at this point. We got CPI that came in yesterday, and honestly, it depends on which side of the aisle you are. That report's being described differently depending on which side of the aisle you're on. You're hearing the president and of course his inner circle I heard his CEA guy, Kevin Hassett, this morning. Of course, his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Yeah, look at this, man. Inflation is certainly like not even a factor. We need to be lowering rates. And then you got reports coming out of the more left-leaning economists saying, look, these tariffs are still driving inflation. It came in hotter than expected, and the markets sold off yesterday. Today we get the PPI report, and it looks to be fairly tame. Market's still selling off, I think, just on the uncertainty. So what's your make of all this information flowing in?
Well, I figured that's what you wanted to talk about because I think it's an important topic to talk about.
Yeah.
Because we have the Fed meeting not this next week, but the week after.
Yeah.
And I think we went monthly was 2.3, went to 2.7. You've looked at enough numbers in your life to know 1 month blip doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah. That's right, and that's and I know all the celebrating over the surplus that we produced as well.
Yeah.
I mean, in business, I have 1 month, and I'm looking around I'm looking around my shoulder, saying, "Okay, when's the other shoe going to drop?" Because this is unusual. I just learned not to get too excited from a positive perspective when things go well, and not to get too down in the dumps when they're not. Things just have a tendency to even out.
Yeah, in fact, my wife and I were talking about it, and we kind of talked about, one of the things when you take introductory statistics, they teach you don't extrapolate from a point because it doesn't tell you anything. But I did get a little curious. I have sitting in front of me on my left screen, last 10 years worth of CPI from a really nifty database called Fred at the Federal Reserve in St. Louis.
I've used that, yeah.
And I like it because it's easy as heck to do stuff.
You're right, yeah.
But if you look at, prior to 2020, we were bumping at 3-ish, 2 to 3-ish, occasionally peaked at 4. 2020, you don't count.
Right.
For my discussion here. The results of the pandemic, you don't count. So my kind of look at it is we're not at where we were prior to the pandemic, but we're close. And I think why the conflict is emerging with Powell and the Fed, and not Powell and the Fed, Powell and Trump is, I think we're about where we need to be, but you don't want to quit. And the analogy I think we discussed before is, fighting inflation is kind of like losing weight. That last 5 to 10 pounds is always a bear.
Yeah.
And most people give up on their diets because you plateau. So I think what will probably happen when they meet in July, they'll say, let's wait to September, which I think is kind of prudent. The president will become unhappy and then move on. And then I think if you think about why he wants to lower rates, certainly lower rates are good for business. Yeah. But more importantly, if you look at, I believe I'm correct here, you can correct me, interest payments are now greater than defense payments.
That's right.
And if you cut that rate in half, that creates fiscal options. If it goes the other way, it just gets hard. So I think the two are correct. And the other thing I found interesting, so I think to characterize, I have a mixed attitude about it. I look at the numbers and say, hey, it's okay. And then I'm playing Mr. Spock here, looking at the data. And then the emotional part of me still sees uncertainty out there.
Yeah.
And is not sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the Fed's posture.
That's my McCoy part.
Yeah, I get it. And I think that's the Fed's posture as well. So, their target's still 2%. So we came in yesterday, the CPI at 2.7. I just don't get the feeling that they're going to make any adjustments downward until we get to 2%. I saw an interview I talked about on the show Monday with the Cleveland Fed governor, and she said, she used the term, they talk in code, as you know, that all the investment community can interpret, but restrictive monetary policy was the code word. That tells me, no, I'm not gonna opt for in my vote to cut rates anytime soon and still maintain 2% is our target.
And I think there's an intangible thing that the Fed has to work for. And you've been around enough leadership positions and you think, the credibility of your leadership is almost the most important thing you got.
Yeah.
And if you said for 15 years the target is 2%, and he can go, never mind. That's okay. Even if it's a bad target, you know how that works. You got to stick to your guns. Well,
the president is clearly upset with Powell. There's hardly a day that goes by that he doesn't castigate the chairman of the Federal Reserve. I mean, insisting drop rates now. And one of the things that is influencing him here, Jim, as you know, that of our 36, nearly 37 trillion of outstanding debt, 9 trillion of it is due to be refinanced before the end of the year. That's a fourth of it. And and a lot of that $9 trillion is currently sitting on the balance sheet at much lower rates. And when we start refinancing, that's going to bump our interest payments.
Yeah, it's going to hurt. And then if I were, say, the Treasury Secretary of Treasury, I'd get real nervous if you come to your office one morning, it's a cold, rainy day, and there's an urgent call from the finance minister of China, says something to the effect, you know what, I don't think we're going to buy as much of your debt as we used to. Well,
they're already trimming their holdings. They're down to $700 billion now. It's Japan that gave us a bit of a scare, recall, a month or so ago at one of the auctions.
Yeah, and that's if I had that job, that would be one of the numerous things that would keep me awake.
Yeah, so But
I guess that's the nature of those jobs that keep you awake.
That's exactly right. That's the nature of it, and that's what you sign up for. And of course, you've got the domestic buyers of our debt. When they start wilting on you, that becomes a concern as well. No doubt about that. But so we continue to see this rift between the president and the Fed chairman. And the Fed chairman really doesn't say much. He just seems to absorb it and take it in stride, and you don't hear much out of him, honestly, until he's summoned to the Capitol for some sort of testimony or they're having their meeting. That's about it.
And I think probably he goes home and kicks the dog around a lot.
Yeah.
Or goes and does a primordial. Yeah. But, if you look at the structure of the Fed and the way executive branch, it's almost designed to have these conflicts.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And that's probably okay, because if you look at countries, the Fed basically reports into whoever the chief executive officer is. They typically have greater inflation.
Right, that's right. So,
it's by design.
I absolutely agree. And I think there's a purpose here. And look, the standard has been for as long as long ago when I first started studying economics in college, you learned back then there's what we called then, Jim, I don't know if you still do, the natural rate of inflation and the natural unemployment rate, right? Is what the terms were used.
Getting around that.
And it 2% on the inflation rate. And so the fact that the Fed is seeking us to get to that level before they take action, I think the problem Powell has, and Rhino and I talk about that a lot, is that he cut rates before we got to that point, right before the election, and it looks like it was a political move rather than a monetary policy move.
And even if it was what they thought they were doing the right thing, you can never get past those perceptions.
So
you do it a month afterwards, it's okay.
It's just inconsistency. So you can't say on the one hand, when we were experiencing at that point, 5% inflation or 4%, something like that. Oh yeah, we see it trending in the right direction. We're gonna ease up on the rates. Now we're at 2.7. We've been hanging in that 2.5, 2.7 range for a few quarters now, and but he still says, oh yeah, we got to get to 2. So if you can hang,
if you look at graph I was looking at, so you haven't hit it. No,
exactly. If you could stay with us, we can dig into the big, beautiful bill and get your thoughts on that. We've got Jim Leggette, lecturer of economics at Mississippi State University. We're in the LMOL studio. We shall return.
We are eagles on the nest in our
No one wants to leave Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're visiting with Jim Leggette, lecturer of economics at Mississippi State University. All right, so Jim, it was not without a significant amount of wrangling and arm twisting and coercion.
Yes.
And prodding.
Maybe coercion.
But we got this big, beautiful bill. I mean, this is a really big, sweeping budgetary measure that incorporates a number of tax reforms. First and foremost, just extending the current tax environment, making it permanent, and then restoring immediate expensing of capital investment, R&D expenses, and then new factory construction as well. These were some of the provisions that were added on the individual side. Tips, overtime, deductions, not exemption, for tax purposes, and then a bump in the standard deduction for seniors as well. I mean, that pretty much describes the tax provisions. Yeah. And then you had some changes in mandatory spending, and you had some legislation to put more into some defense initiatives and the border. What do you think at this point? Do you think this was good legislation, and how might this affect our economy?
Well, it kind of, no, I think Musk was right. It can be big or it can be beautiful, but it can't be both. However, let's concentrate on the beautiful part.
Okay.
I think, as you pointed out, the extension of the tax cuts and making them permanent is awfully darn important. You could argue all day whether it's the right tax policy, but now you know what the policy is.
Yeah.
That's awfully important in and of itself. I think the pro-business things like accelerating depreciation and all that stuff is good. I think probably the border things, if you're really going to do it, you got to put money there.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's just rhetoric.
Yep.
There are some reforms to college spending. Probably my students hate it. But, it can't be open-ended because it doesn't work. Yeah. And I was kind of reflecting upon that is I think what's happened there is you've divorced the cost of it to the payback. I think we've kind of lost the idea of college as an investment. And some programs are going to pay off and some are not. I mean, that's just that reality. And there's some things I'll call it pork, or you're doing campaign promises like the SALT deduction, state and local income tax.
I left that out.
I hate it. Yeah, I think it should be zero, but I understand why it's there. So,
yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I left that out of the individual provisions. Thank you. Yeah.
And depending on where you live, if you're in the Northeast, that's awfully darn important to you. If you're where we are, probably not as important. So I guess in balance is probably okay. And now I'm going to put on a political science hat. I don't have one back there. It is but it is, whether you like the thing or not, it is a pretty good legislative triumph. In the sense you work the process, you got people got in there and got dirty. They made the sausage, probably as a combination of giving Senator so-and-so from someplace something, as well as, hey, if you ain't playing ball, I'm going to turn the X-mob loose on you. But that's how legislation works,
sure.
Right?
Sure. Yeah, Senator Murkowski.
We talk about Lyndon Johnson giving the treatment.
Oh, yeah. Senator Murkowski in Alaska got some special concessions for her state in some of the reforms in SNAP, as an example. And the Rural Hospital Fund, they bumped that up to $50 billion, something she wanted. All that to secure her vote, to get this thing to pass. And so she got some special carve-outs on that. Not surprising.
That's how it works. And you probably remember, let's go way back, when Reagan got his big tax cut in, he had to, I'm going to use the word appease. They're called the boll weevils. The Southern Democrats, like conservative Democrats back when there were some.
Yeah.
And you did something. I think Phil Graham was one of them, and that's just kind of how the legislative process works.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So
it doesn't work like Mr. Smith.
I'll get your take on this, Jim. I believe that the business provisions, the immediate expensing of machinery and equipment, of course, and R&D Actually, I think they call it research and experience, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of the new terminology now. That I think this will do more to promote economic growth and increase revenues to the Treasury than anything, because the president is saying, we got about a minute left, that's necessary to tackle our deficits. What do you think?
And I agree with him, because you can only grow your way out of this problem. And what you guys were talking before about the AI and the energy thing.
Yeah.
That's going to be darn expensive.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of darn important. And the point you're making, you're not going to get there by personal income tax. You got to give businesses a reason to go spend money, and profit is still a good word, right?
I hope so. That's absolutely right. Jim, always, it is around here.
Give that yo-yo you were talking about earlier.
Oh, my gosh, not to him. Always good talking to you. Enjoy the conversation, Jim. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Take care, gentlemen.
You got it. We're coming right back after Fox News and Super Talk News with Professor Christopher Green. Stay with us. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 2 of Middays is now live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Hump Day.
We're pleased to welcome now Professor Christopher Green. He is an assistant director at the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society at The Ohio State University. Professor, always good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you.
So the Supreme Court's been pretty busy, as is normal, I believe, for this time of year. And the big ruling that is getting a lot of attention concerns the Trump administration's plan to really dissolve the Federal Department of Education. First, explain to us, why did the Supreme Court have to get involved in this? Can a president, as the commander-in-chief, just for an agency that's under their purview, can they just not shut it down, let everybody go? Why do you got to have Supreme Court involved?
Yeah, so no. Basically, the president has these statutes, and he has said, basically, hey, Secretary Linda McMahon, I want you, so you have a bunch of discretion. These statutes, they have massive amounts of discretion, but that discretion does have limits. So basically what the president told her to do was, pursuant to my long-term goal of getting the federal government out of this business entirely, I want you to come as close as you can to shutting down the department within existing statutory discretion. He acknowledged, at least in a theoretical matter, that like literally shutting it down would require a statute.
Okay.
But essentially, he's not allowed to literally say, we've got a statute saying there has to be a thing. There's not going to be a thing. This was what got James II into such trouble in 1688 or 1685 to 88. His whole reign, he was saying, well, Parliament can pass a statute, but I can just suspend it. And we said, in basically the take care clause, the president has a duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And essentially, so the majority did not explain themselves about why they're, for now, at least allowing this to go forward. The dissent, so there were a number of people who thought, like, man, the majority should explain themselves at greater length. They, I would think, are pretty likely to explain themselves at greater length, but they want to do that in a posture where they've had enough time to really explain themselves. The dissent says, well, we've seen enough. This is a pretext this is nonsense that we're gonna call out the president on his nonsense. This notion that you're doing, coming as close to shutting it down as you can, but not actually violating the statutes that say it's got to exist. That's just malarkey. So the majority, again, it's just sort of imagining what would the rationale be for why this would be legal. There's a bunch of other rationales why these particular plaintiffs might not really be the right position to sue. But why would this be legal? One rationale is we really, really heavily presuppose that the president is doing literally what he says, which is using existing discretion to the extent he can to make the federal role in education be as small as they can make it, but not literally to violate the statutes. The dissent says, well, the only reason to be doing this is if ultimately he wanted to. He clearly wishes the statutes don't exist, but it's not illegal to want changes in legislation. Actually, the Constitution itself says the president can recommend changes in legislation. The president is not allowed to repeal statutes. That's again a longstanding principle, but really, it's the fault of these statutes giving the president so much discretion.
Okay.
We don't. Again, Congress has got to do its job if it wants to literally, be able to read the U.S. code and then see what's actually going to happen and have those match. Well, Congress has got to do its job a lot better than it has.
So I just wonder, Professor, when the department was created, I believe through an act that was signed into law by Jimmy Carter in 1980, but it flowed through the normal lawmaking process. It wasn't created with the stroke of a pen, an executive order by then President Jimmy Carter. So if it's created with an act, can then the president dissolve it unilaterally or with just executive power? Would it not have to be, I guess, torn down with legislation?
Yeah, that's so, and I think the president has technically acknowledged that it would have to.
Okay,
but there's all kinds of questions about reduction in force and staffing,
which is what they're doing.
And when do you fill jobs that have come open? They say, well, we've got more important things to do.
I got you.
Than to fill those positions right now. So you can always have this competing priorities rationale that you can bring in. And there's a question about, at what point are the courts entitled or required to kind of call BS on that?
Okay.
And say, no, it's not a competing priority. You just don't like this federal function. You think it's illegitimate. There's a line somebody said about Bill Bennett, who was Secretary of Ed under Reagan, said he takes an illegitimate function of government and makes it interesting. So Linda McMahon taking something that maybe the president and she doesn't want to be a federal department, and during its it's not as a death throes because the president again is not the person who's allowed to kill it. Congress is allowed to kill it.
Yeah.
But in its final, she's like, this is its final mission, which, the dissent from the Supreme Court is taking that very seriously and saying like, oh my goodness, you can't possibly allow this person to kind of suggest that she's going to violate these statutes that require her department to exist. But, it depends on how much of a thumb on the scale in terms of presuming good faith and saying like, no, she didn't say she's going to violate the statute. She just sort of gave that vibe.
Yeah.
So vibe interpretation from the courts is
she's
different levels of enthusiasm.
She's a bit of an anomaly, I think it's fair to say, because she holds a very high-ranking position in government. She's a cabinet secretary, yet she's fully on board and embraces the idea of essentially diminishing, if you will, if not fully shutting down the agency over which she presides. If you don't see that,
well, the swamp folks. The people in these agencies. When you put in a boss who says like, I think we should be smaller. Oh my word! People get so upset. So you might remember Mike Wallace, nominee for the Fifth Circuit. And he was in charge of Legal Services Corporation in the 80s. And he actually came to Congress and said, well, I think you should give us less money. Oh, My word, did he make enemies? And Ted Kennedy actually got a chance to give some questioning when Mike was before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I mean, it just, the notion of some of these folks that you might actually put people in charge who think that the DC world should be doing less. I mean, they just. The way that Ted Kennedy his mind was boggled at that very notion, I found it quite entertaining. Some people will find it more depressing, but this is one of the things we gotta have people who know the importance of sometimes working themselves out of a job and thinking like, what I mostly want to do is set myself up so that people always have to be coming back to me to hire me to do more stuff. That's just not a good attitude, not a healthy attitude for the future of our republic. We need people who are willing to work themselves out of a job, and moving education responsibilities to states and localities. Maybe with a federal subsidy, maybe with a federal worries about inequality, 14th Amendment enforcement stuff. Maybe a relatively thin role like that, but there's just massive federal subsidization of the whole higher ed world. It's got problems, and it has not been a great dynamic. And again, I hope Congress will do its job and come up with straightforward rules that we won't have to worry about who's exercising the discretion that exists under them.
Yeah. Mississippi Secretary of State Michael Watson is listening to us. I believe he's in Washington, or certainly was yesterday. Attended a meeting where Secretary McMahon said, it would ultimately take a congressional act, if you will, to shut the department down. So that makes sense. But, they could cut it and change duties and transfer responsibilities. And one example he cited was this new private voucher scholarship program that's in the reconciliation bill is going to be managed by the Department of Treasury and not the Department of Education. So that's a way to circumvent it. We got a break. If you can hang around, Professor, we can continue talking about some other stuff on the boards.
Sure, that'd be great.
All right, we got Professor Christopher Green. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're visiting with Professor Christopher Green from the Ohio State University. So, the Supreme Court at this point, Professor, it seems like there's a bit of dissension among the ranks of the left-leaning justices concerning one of their cohorts there. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I like having dissents. I think it's funny. You sometimes teaching con law, you'll go back and you'll find a unanimous opinion, and it'll have to get revised a few years later. And sometimes scholars will say the explanation is, well, the reason it was written a little more sloppily than it might otherwise have been written is because it didn't have a dissent to push up against. So I've sort of thought, so there's actually a European Court of Human Rights. They have this court that makes these decisions, and it's like 30 judges on it. And when you do that, you really get a lot of views expressed. So you get a wider range of what gets discussed. I think there's a lot of value in having back and forth and refining. I'm always a fan of more discussion, response to counter arguments. So like Justice Scalia, Justice Stevens, they would love to have these dueling footnotes back and forth. Some folks like Justice Rehnquist, Chief Justice Rehnquist, Justice Kennedy, they were just like, no, I've got my little work of art of the majority opinion, and I've got my votes for it, so I'm just not going to respond. I like to see more dissent. I like to see more discussion and counter argument, even if the dissent is kind of wacky. Maybe especially if the dissent is a little wacky. I want to say, like, well, what are the wacky people? What's the strongest argument that somebody could make for this kind of position? And I find it fascinating. I mean, I think the fact that they're pushing toward the take care clause, the fact that they're really giving it serious attention, is a very good thing. The fact that that is the argument they're pushing, I hope it'll, maybe make people look a little bit closely at the late Stewart troubles with administration and think, well, what could we do to have a better rule of law than having all this massive discretion that you can just. It invites pretextual use, I think. I've been, so some of the cases, there was one case, the big Nollan delegation case. I was pretty disappointed that there wasn't more hostility to executive discretion on the part of these folks on the left on the court, given that they are saying things like this in the case this week, but. Anytime people articulate, a position, that gives you the opportunity to look at it carefully and say, is this really consistent with what you were saying a week ago? And on the other side, why are you so in love with the use of discretion when it's, goring an ox that you like to get gored, but you weren't upset a month ago? And it, just the process of forcing judges to articulate reasons and being able to go over carefully and see whether they're consistent. I think it's great. Some of the dissent stuff where they really look like they're playing to the media. I look at this and I think, oh my goodness, I do not want televisions. I do not want this to become a visual medium as well. Yeah. Because I think I really believe in the. Neil Postman's critique of television that it's amusing ourselves to death. This wouldn't quite be amusing ourselves to death. This would be kind of, exciting the body politic for clicks to death. That's another way that the Republic can die, is when we just lose our ability to focus for extended periods of time because we're emoting all the time. So getting entertainment too much of the time, getting just mad at each other and, kind of accusing each other of bad faith. As a contact sport, if you think the other side has bad faith, it's okay to articulate that, but you don't like to see it descend into kind of the equivalent of a food fight. But in general, I love seeing dissent. I imagine if I were on one of these courts, I'd be dissenting all the time, saying like, well, what we really ought to be doing is this wacky other stuff. Give me your best argument against it, and saying that 17 times until they actually. Feel compelled to respond. I imagine that's what I'd be doing. So I'd love to see disagreement. That's really what we do as people training future lawyers, future citizens, is teach them how to disagree and really think carefully, how to learn from counter arguments in ways that don't require you to lug people over the head.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this legislation, the reconciliation bill, the big beautiful bill as it is branded, has a number of reforms to very popular programs, the SNAP program, the Medicaid program. And so it should come as no surprise that there are attorneys general from numerous states, the blue states in particular, that appear to be mounting lawsuits against the Trump administration shortly after the bill became law here. Is this
unsurprising?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is this what we can expect, I guess? We pass laws in Congress, our president signs them, and then I guess there are folks that don't care for some of those reforms and provisions in law, and they say, okay, we're going to sue. I mean, it just seems like we're in this continuous mode of that.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you're making changes, there's going to be a question whether you're making the changes in good faith or in bad faith. Okay. So back in 2012, we had this Enfield versus Sebelius case. Yeah. And the Medicaid part of that holding said, hey, you're not allowed to just threaten to just completely dismantle Medicaid for the purpose of getting people on board with this expansion of Medicaid. Yes. If you're really doing this in good faith, you have to offer the old system.
Right.
I imagine that a lot of the argument, I think they're going to be really going carefully over these changes and making if they can, making an NFIB versus Sibelius type argument. The legislative drafters, and as they're writing the legislation, they have to keep these arguments in mind.
Okay. Yeah.
And they have to be thinking like, are we just doing this for leverage, or are we doing this for a legitimate purpose? And the temptation to do stuff just for the purpose of leverage is always there. Prosecutors charge stuff just for leverage. People pass, why did you take away my timber subsidies or my oil subsidies or my coal subsidies? Well, because you didn't get on board. And if you look at the names of the 51, the states of the 51 that passed, or the 50 plus the vice president that you needed, you'll notice there aren't any coal states. And that's why it happened. Like, is that okay? Well, there is a reasonable argument that the duty to promote the interests of all the citizens in the union, promote the interests of all the states, spending money in the general welfare. There's a pretty strong argument that there is some kind of principle expressed there that you can second guess. These kind of log rolling, legislative nonsense that we've gotten, ever since the 1820s, probably earlier than that. But once you massively expand the electorate, people get legislation passed because they're just giving people stuff that they want to pay for at below market rates, and you get it overconsumed. And it's a dynamic that we've been. I wouldn't say it's perfectly well understood, but pretty well understood. Basically, what's going on? There's a line. Bribing the people with their own money. And when you get that dynamic going, and goodness knows in the state where we've lauded the appropriators as we have in Mississippi, we know how that dynamic works, and it's not a great game. Again, my buddy was saying it's like the DH rule. You might not like the rule, but if you have the rule and your pitcher is not your one of your best hitters, you're going to put in a DH. Okay? You're not going to hit your pitcher just because you don't like the rule. So in the system we've got, you got to play the game, but it. Again, long-term health of the republic, or even like medium-term, like what is our situation going to look like in 2050, 2100? Getting really devolving more responsibilities to the states, so you don't have the stakes being so high at the federal level, where the presidential election should matter a lot less than they do. They are
totally
extraordinarily important. There's no question about it. But I would love it if we could, if it didn't matter so much, and we could have genuinely an administrator we hire the person who's just like the best person at moving the X's and O's around, and we hash out what we're going to do as a country at the federal level in Congress, and you get more compromise. But that's it seems it's a distant. I don't think a pipe dream, but it's pretty distant on the horizon. It's going to be a long walk. We're going to need to persevere for a couple generations before we get there.
Well, we got to go, but I just leave this final thought with you: is that it seems like we've really sort of distorted and contorted and stretched the original principle of those not explicit in the Constitution, powers not explicit in the Constitution, should be delegated to states. Seems like we've stretched that an awful lot over the decades. But
absolutely.
Appreciate it, Professor. Always enjoy the conversation. Thanks a lot.
Good to see you. God bless you.
You bet. We're coming right back in the
From the CK, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Whatever happens, I leave it all to chance. Another heartache, another failed romance. On and on. Does anybody know what we are living for? I guess I'm
Back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So this rescissions package we were discussing earlier in the program, $9.4 billion. This, of course, would be funding for programs, purposes previously passed by Congress. So it's essentially being reversed so that future funding as enacted by Congress would not occur. This is $9.4 billion, and it includes NPR, PBS, bunch of USAID funding. $9.4 billion out of $7 trillion is obviously nothing. It's in the scheme of things. I mean, just relatively speaking here. But it was still contentious. Ended up in a 50-50 tie. 3 Republicans voted against the measure. Senators Collins, Murkowski, and also McConnell voted against it. But
McConnell's staff did.
I think that's probably right. He said that he isn't comfortable handing the White House a blank check to cut whatever they like.
Right.
He is indeed a swamp creature. No doubt about it. They won't tell us how they're going to apply the cut, said McConnell. Afraid of the staff. I want to make it clear I don't have any problem with reducing spending. That, however, would be like a blank check, and I don't think that's appropriate. So it ended up requiring the vote of the vice president to get it over the finish line. It ended up also being reduced by a value of $400 million down to $9 billion. That's because there were some Republican senators that felt that logistical funding for the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, this was a program established by President Bush, still needed federal money. So they couldn't get that included in the $9.4 billion package as it came from the House. So it's now $9 billion essentially on the button there, and this would mean it has to go back to the House to conference since they marked it up there, changed it up. We'll see what happens, but that's interesting. $9 billion. Really does it bode well? Does it for significant cuts that might actually move the needle when you're arguing and it took 3 months to pass $9 billion?
Not without a significant swing in the Senate.
Right. Agree. So our interest tab, just for comparative purposes, just our interest is $3 billion a day. So that's 3 days, of interest payments. That's effectively what took them 3 months to get through, and it's got to go back to the House. We're not assured that it gets through.
Welcome to the speed of government.
Man, it just doesn't feel like they're serious about really tackling our deficits and addressing spending. Again, I hope that the predictions that growth is going to help us out of this mess. I think you got to have both. I think we are going to see growth, economic growth in the country, which is going to lead to higher revenues to the Treasury. I absolutely believe that as a result of the bill passing. But there are no major cuts to spending in that bill. In fact, there are increases, to be honest. And the debt tab rises every day. And the interest on that is still clicking the cash register. So we got some work to do. And I sincerely hope that the Congress gets serious. The Republicans are currently in charge of both houses about addressing the runaway spending, because the reforms they made to Medicaid and SNAP, which I think generally are good reforms, I think they may be overshooting a bit the impact that will have on spending. And by the same token, as I talked about yesterday, the Democrats are grossly exaggerating the impact. I mean, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's off the charts, exaggeration of what might happen. And because I think I told you, I stopped and viewed a couple of videos from these opponents, just random people, activists, because everybody's got a camera and everybody's got the ability to publish anything they record on a camera to the world. Some people tend to think people actually care. I'm fascinated by it. I just like to hear how they think. But I will tell you, I'm disturbed at the number of young people in this country that are buying into this socialism garbage. They're being, of course, trained in colleges by professors who are losers, who support such an economic system, and they're producing little obedient socialist graduates. And that bothers me a lot. I don't feel like they're getting exposed to all ideas and all concepts and all value systems so that they could use their critical thinking skills. Maybe that's asking for too much to make their mind up. Rather, they're just having it thrust upon them, and often with the threat of from professors. You know this happens. If you don't align with my ideals, it just could affect your grade. Don't think about arguing or offering your counterpoints of view either orally or in written form. That might have an effect. That's a real thing. That's not just fear-mongering hyperbole from me here. I've talked to enough students to know that's actually going on, and I think they're telling the truth. But these nuts that are going out there to social media, publishing these short videos, one that caught my attention yesterday is a young lady who now says that the big, beautiful bill conflicts with Christian values. So it's amazing how these people who are so anti-Christian, don't want any elements associated with Christianity in their midst to be present anywhere. Honestly, you wonder if they have problems with that just being confined to the inside of a Christian church. But these are now people who are saying that, well, you Christians need to get on board with the fact that this bill is anti-Christian. You're taking away health care. You're taking away food. That's not consistent with Christian principles. This is on your hands. You people are voting for people who are doing your dirty work. You're using, this one says, fig leaves to hide your sins. Oh, you voted against kindness, against compassion, everything Jesus stood for. That's what you voted for. I know the core problem here is that it requires second-order thinking. You've been so spot on with that. Because what this fool doesn't understand is that the economic system that we have in this country is what made our poorest people, our most impoverished, richer than the majority of the world.
Well, that's one thing they don't understand. They don't understand a lot of things. That's why they keep voting Democrat.
Oh, man. So,
and I refuse to be browbeaten about my Christian faith by someone who buys into the woke religion.
And that's exactly what it is. And this individual, and I'm afraid because I look at the comments as I always do, and there's thousands of people that like this stuff, that agree with this nonsense, and is really blasting people, you church goers. That's the way she describes you country folks that go to church. You just want to slap her, honestly, when I hear stuff like that. And says that we're not merciful. We're not compassionate. Our views aren't consistent with those of Jesus Christ. You ripped health care from the sick. And what they don't think about is, no, conversely, it's because of our economic systems that sick people even have health care. Because you go to other countries that don't use capitalism, but rather are more socialism-oriented in nature, they don't get health care. Some, like it's non-existent. Others Oh, yeah, you'll get it, but by the time you do, you're dead already. They don't acknowledge that. Merle Haggard bumping us out of this segment. I got to point out, that's one of the tunes the house band's going to be playing at the Neshoba County Fair. Looking forward to it. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
I'll drink my beer in a tavern, sing a little bit of these working man blues. This song for the working man.
Poly up a
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Whiskey bottles and brand new cars. Oak tree, you're in my way. There's too much coke and too much smoke. Look what's going on inside you.
Little Southern rock there from Leonard Skinner. We got a tune in our set from Leonard Skinner as well. It's my favorite one, by the way, to play on the drums of the 18 tunes we'll be performing. It's pretty neat. So, would this be gaslighting, combination of gaslighting and projection when you've got this person who clearly, I would say, I don't know for sure, wouldn't appear to be a Christian, who's now condemning Christians because of their support for political leaders who voted for this legislation? Would that kind of qualify? Telling Christians you're not compassionate, you're not living by the tenets of Christianity, you're not adhering to the teachings of
I think that
Jesus
could be
Christ?
considered an attempt at gaslighting. It's more just living in ignorance.
I just feel like so you're looking for this utopia, which doesn't exist. Isn't that something we as Christians believe that no, you are you're destined for life as a flawed mortal until such time that.
Well, that's the problem. They don't really care what Christians believe. They just try to use Christian beliefs to further their asinine goals.
That's the problem right there. I just find this disgusting, honestly, that you're, again...
Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't complain when a Christian uses their Christian values to govern and say that's against the Constitution, even though it's nowhere in the Constitution, and then try to use Christian values to manipulate them into seeing it your way. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
So, but this statement that you're ripping health care away from people...
Bull.
So, do they not... I know this is a rhetorical question. Do they not consider that there are legions of individuals, as you well know, that are receiving taxpayer-funded benefits, such as health care, that really don't deserve them?
They could care less.
That's the fundamental problem here. So look at Medicaid. Spending still going up in Medicaid in accordance with this legislation. It's just some reforms were put in place to make sure the people who legitimately deserve or are entitled to, based on our law now, we could have a philosophical discussion about whether or not anyone's entitled to government-provided health care, just accordance with our law. All we're saying is we just want to make sure that you meet the eligibility requirements more than once a year. And you know this happens all the time, that sometime during the year they really no longer meet the requirements, which often is a good thing because that means their financial situation has improved, or maybe they're disabled and they've been cured. All the above, right? So isn't that what we want? Why do they object to that? That's an example. And then in the SNAP program, you're taking food out of the mouths of babies. No, all we're saying is, hey, states, you got to get your act together. You're making too many dang mistakes in administering this program. And the federal government says, And if you exceed a certain threshold, you're going to have to pay for some of that. So if the states and people, including Democrats, want to keep paying for these mistakes and absorbing the cost of that, do it at the state level. It's easy. So this notion that you're taking it away, no, we're not. We're just telling you got to get your act together. Is it too much to expect that you have an error rate that's less than 6%? Is that too much to expect? What if we had an error rate of 6% in taking off and landing airplanes? What would that look like?
It'd be pretty rough.
Yeah. There's some things you can't have an error rate of 6%. And unfortunately, and this is the problem, we got numerous states who are in the 12 and 13. Mississippi, we're at 11%. So we are going to have to clean our act up here in our administration of the SNAP program. We're going to have to hit the hip and pay more money to account for the loss of revenue from the federal government. It's high time we start doing that anyhow. We're too dang reliant on the federal government. This is not unreasonable. This is not taking food away from anybody. There's no provision in there that says we're not giving food to those people. There's nothing that says that. Nothing. Oh, work to 64. Right now, you hit 55 and you're good. You're still eligible for SNAP if your income is below a certain level. Even though you're still able-bodied and you could work, as most people do, until that age.
That's why I ignore the vast majority of these emotion-led midwits.
And that's exactly what it is.
Because their opinions are worthless.
It's going all over the place, man. It's just disgusting how they twist and turn and distort and contort the facts.
But won't
and
lift
the
a finger to actually help anybody.
That's so true.
They'll just hashtag activism their lazy butt to
right.
Feeling virtuous.
Fox News Super Talk News next, then the afternoon portion of Middays.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, is now live on this
Hump Day.
We're in the Element Well studio on the C Spire text line on the 662. I may be naive, but I don't see New York City politics as a big issue. New York City is hopelessly Democrat. It won't change. Segregating Democrats in big cities is good. It keeps them away from normal Americans. Yeah, I disagree, and I'll tell you why I think it's a problem. The first thing is that New York City is still a robust and vibrant part of the overall nation's and world's economy. It is the financial center of the universe. And honestly, without much of the activity that occurs in the financial sector, in particular in New York, we wouldn't survive. We rely on that. Now, that doesn't mean, as Rhino pointed out, they maybe need to be thinking about relocating. And many are. You're seeing. The mayor of Miami, his name escapes me, is someone who seems like for a brief period he was a candidate for president. Hispanic.
Francis Suarez?
Suarez, yeah. You ever seen him speak? He's brilliant. And Miami, you might categorize as number 2 in terms of Miami to New York in terms of just being a financial hub. And look, he's actively recruiting the big banks and the big financial operations and institutions in New York City to come to Miami, where there are no income taxes, by the way. And I think he's doing a heck of a job in that respect. But in the meantime, that's the truth. And the other thing is there are 8 million people in New York. There are actually nearly as many registered Republicans in New York City as there are people in Mississippi. They're just outnumbered by a long shot. And then you've got upstate New York, which is very red and Republican, except when you get into the inner cities like Buffalo, for example. But it's shockingly Republican red. It's kind of like when you get east of Los Angeles. You get some of that as well, or north of Los Angeles, which is, of course, very blue. And then the other thing that bugs me is how many people in this country are now buying into this crap. We're not talking about just sort of minor differences in policies and degree to which government should be involved in our lives and our economy. We're talking about going way out there, that this guy could rise to the level of being the nominee for mayor of America's largest city, because this kind of stuff spreads and it will infiltrate other cities. Now, I personally think he's going to get elected and it's going to be disastrous. Honestly, it may not be, because a lot of what he's talking about, he wants to do, there might be populist rhetoric, probably ain't going to get done. Some of the tax stuff he wants to do requires state level legislation. So likely won't get done. And it feels like, Rhino, that we have to go through these cycles where every so often we have to remind people how bad liberalism is. They kind of get away from it, and then it sounds so virtuous. Think about that. Grocery stores run by the government. Oh, yeah, that will sell stuff cheaper than the for-profit grocers, as an example. Free bus rides and tax those billionaires to hell and back, right? That's great.
You saw the article where they were trying to explain how he was going to pull off the state-run grocery stores by simply buying in bulk.
Oh, nobody's thought about that. You got to be kidding me. That's their strategy.
Yeah.
Buy in bulk. Walmart hadn't thought about that, have they?
Never crossed their mind, apparently.
Good gosh. And this is a guy that they're going to elect to be. I want to check his degree. Buying in bulk. You mean he's trying to inform or enlighten the voters to this concept of economies of scale, a principle that's been around for decades? What a freaking idiot. Unbelievable.
Well, in fairness, it's not the candidate that said that. It's the candidate's supporters.
Oh, okay.
So they're idiots.
Okay.
But then again, if you're voting for a communist, you're an idiot.
Oh, man. Millions of them, sadly. So
millions of idiots.
It's disturbing.
Simply too stupid to be trusted with a conscionable vote.
I think that's on the C Spire. I agree. On the C Spire text line, I think he's a symptom of certain aspects of our current system failing sections of people, and they are turning to anyone offering anything. What does that mean, failing? Tell me what's failing. And what should government be doing in someone's life that they may consider a failure? Why are they looking to government to solve that problem? Is that not the fundamental problem here, though, challenge with our society? Is, well, that's not working, let's get government to fix it. No, not government. That's not who we need fixing things. And the only fix is stay the hell out of the way. That's the fix we need. Get your long arms and fingers and grubby little hands out of the economy. The Democrats are all upset. You've seen this because of a measure that would publish medical debt on your credit report. And I think there was a move in the Biden administration. I remember talking about it, where medical debt would no longer be reported. And so they're all mad because the Trump administration is reinstating that. And, of course, they say they're being influenced by all the billionaire banks and all that sort of stuff, you know. Well, shouldn't lenders, creditors, shouldn't they know? I get it. Medical debt is a surprise hardship often that people are faced with, and they're trying to figure out a way to honor their commitment and pay their debts. And they got collectors bugging the heck out of them for that. But shouldn't a prospective lender know about that? When you're saddled with this big liability before you go into more debt? What's wrong with that, man? Shouldn't they know? I mean, but so they're saying is, well, that means they can't buy a house or a car. Well, right. Right, because they probably can't pay for it. Get it worked out. And you know as well as I do, physicians, hospitals, holders of the debt, the creditors, man, they'll work with you big time. Will they not? They'll work with you.
But that requires actually having an intent to pay.
You've got to pay them, but working out some sort of payment terms that you can handle, they'll do it because they want to get paid. And they understand that often these are hardships and surprises. Now, this is different than when you've been improperly billed. That's a completely different situation. And you could argue that, by the way, if it's on your credit report. You can dispute it. So, but they're freaking out over this. So that's another just small, trivial example of government getting involved where they shouldn't. I think
another way to rephrase that or reframe it is it's another example of Democrats wanting government to be their daddy.
That's a good point. Just be their caretaker, essentially. And we're training young people to become accustomed to that. I think the good news is I have seen some reports that say there is the interest in entrepreneurship is on the rise. And the last thing you want as an entrepreneur is an overbearing government. That just every place and point you turn to, it's like, oh gosh, more government that I got to deal with. I just want to get my idea off the ground and serve society and make some money. That's what entrepreneurs are driven by. Casey on the C Spire text line talking about this young lady, I'll be kind and refer to her that is blasting Christians for supporting the big, beautiful bill. Says, I wonder how much of their income they give or how many hours they volunteer. I think the answer to that is a big fat zero.
More than likely, yeah.
She also says, schools push college. Most degrees do not lead to gainful employment because it keeps them gainfully employed, peddling content that is of no value. That's what needs reform.
But I want to take the philosophy of Harry Potter.
That's what needs reform in a desperate way. And in my view, we certainly shouldn't be providing any kind of financial assistance as taxpayers to students that go pursue these degrees and these subject matter curriculum that are of no value. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
On a plane, hopeless heaven.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I wish you were here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year.
Well, the Dow's now in the green. The president, by the way, held a press conference today. We were watching it live here in the studio. Surrounded by members of his cabinet, not all of them, but several. Those that worked on his Council of Economic Advisors there in the White House and reporters, and the question was asked, are you going to fire Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve Chairman? And Rhino and I were both receiving notifications from the various news sources saying, yeah, he's written a letter, says he's going to fire him. But then when he was asked this question this morning in this little news conference, he said, no, I don't think we're going to do that. But he still is really saying derogatory things about him and demeaning him and blasting him for not taking action.
Yeah, I think the statement was that he's not going to get rid of him, but he might be in trouble with fraud over the $2.5 billion spent on renovating a 4-story building in D.C.
He sure did. He said, this is the president, I don't rule out, this is his exact quote, anything, but I think it's highly unlikely unless he has to leave for fraud. And then he said, quote, I mean, it's possible there's fraud involved with a $2.5 billion renovation, talking about renovation to the Federal Reserve headquarters, and which is crazy. I mean, it's what planet is this guy on, honestly? $2.5 billion. Already, this project's been going on, by the way, for like 4 years, and it's already $700 million over budget. $700 million. That just sounds like the epitome of government incompetence right there. Someone on the C Spire text line was asking about Scary Gary. Oh, yeah, he's still around. In fact, I just shared earlier that he fixed my headset. Stayed after the show yesterday. I was in the studio, and my headset needed some new ear pads, and he took care of it for you. Oh, yeah, he's our man, especially when we do remotes, man. He is integral to that process, traversing around the state in the big SuperTalk RV. Mike from Columbus says, I heard Kevin O'Leary saying just that. We need to be teaching personal credit management. He sure did. In an interview here in the last couple of days, he said, yeah, math and science and reading, all that's fine, but we need to be teaching about credit cards. He said to 5 and 6 year olds. But what he was saying is, folks who graduate from college and have no idea how to just handle basic household budgets and finance, especially managing credit cards, which can get out of control in a hurry. He's right about that. I agree. Let's see. What does AOC and mayor candidate from New York have in common? Both are idiots, says Jimmy from Monticello. That's after our diatribe about that. Certainly him, and Rhino pointed out it's his supporters who are saying, yeah, the government-run grocery stores are going to be able to sell at a lower cost because they're going to buy on volume, which just absolutely illustrates how clueless they are. Same folks hollering about how hospital reporting debt or crying caused their closing, says John in Pontotoc. That's a good point, John. You don't pay your bills, then and they don't have the income coming in for the services they provide. Right, that doesn't work. That's pretty straightforward. And I'm hearing from the medical community, just anecdotally, that more folks are not paying the patient's responsibility part of their services rendered. Insurance is paying their part. Of course, patients sometimes have a responsibility as well due to deductibles or copays, and they're not paying their part. That's a problem. So we're talking about insured people are not paying the patient's part. The big, of course, debt comes, generally speaking, from uninsured people, and they're compelled by government or these hospitals to serve them, treat them under the EMTALA law in the ER, whether they can pay or not. So they just get left holding the bag. If Mamdani actually does win, we need to figure out how we can detach New York, just float it to Northern Africa, says CC in Sanatobia. Well, I think I made the case where it's not a good thing, and it's not going to be just limited to New York City, I promise. It's already happening in other parts of the country. You may have seen, for example, the socialist mayor of Chicago's got a big problem on his hands. The Chicago public school system is running a little short on dough. And they're literally looking at ways they can raise taxes to fix that. You've seen this. I mean, they are going to cut some spending, but let's say to their disappointment, they're doing that. But they're literally investigating approaches to to raise taxes. Minneapolis, another highly liberal city. This, of course, ground zero for the entire movement, the BLM movement that occurred in the wake of the George Floyd incident. It occurred in Minneapolis. It's always been deep blue. Their city council votes, get this, on a project they have awarded to a consultant to study how to tax the rich. True story. They want to tax the wealthiest residents and businesses. And they're looking at hiring consultants to do so. They need more taxes coming in because they spend too much dang money. Council Vice President Aisha Shagtai defends the policy, saying taxing the rich, I don't think, is a controversial opinion in Minneapolis. And this is the problem. There are people on the right as well that would call themselves conservatives. They, too, support increasing taxes. And why do I say that? Because when you poll this thing, should the rich pay more, it's usually in the 60 to 65% range. Well, that's more than just the Democrats in this country. So this is disturbing that sort of attitude, those sentiments are gaining popularity and traction in the country. That, oh yeah, the solution is just send more money to government. That is just mind-boggling to me. The only thing we need from government, says Mike in Gulfport, is to leave us alone and cut spending. Well, those two work hand in hand. Honestly, Mike, I hear you. He also goes on to say, I feel, as you and many others do, that the colleges are teaching the socialist communist theocracy, yet we continue to laud our college presidents. Why? We are allowing them to hire these idiots. Who's in charge? It's gone way past just political party. Why would a state university allow these teachings? Who has the power to correct this trend? The governor, legislature, board of governors? I have grands in college, and they tell me that if you disagree, you get your grades bad and ridiculed. Yeah, so, I mean, we started with, I think, what was good legislation, which is to prohibit any instruction concerning DEI in higher ed in Mississippi. That was enacted into law this past session. It also applies to hiring, that you can't employ any sort of DEI preferential treatment, if you will, based on the physical profile of a person in hiring standards. But I hear you, Mike. It's a tough one. About the only thing the legislature can do, of course, is, I think, pass law, as they did. I thought that was a good move, that prohibits the teaching that, you know, any one group of people is superior to another, or requiring a group of people to admit they have privilege and they're superior. I don't remember all the various provisions, Rhino, but in general, that's what that law did. So as far as hiring faculty that spew this stuff in the classroom, I'm not sure what you could do about that, other than you could, certainly the administration could ensure that students who don't align with their views are not discriminated against in grading. Now, that's extremely subjective, of course, but that is something that certainly should be investigated and managed and monitored. I totally agree. And I've heard it from more than a couple of people that that's going on. I don't know that that's anything new. It seems like it has amped up somewhat of late. But again, I think that largely came from just the last few years. It all kind of started with the George Floyd deal, and everything after that, they just feel like they're sort of have a free...
That any dissenting opinion is violence.
Yeah, a free reign. So real violence, of course, is considered free expression.
It's justified.
Right, justified.
If it goes in the right direction.
Exactly. But...
That's why I consider these people's opinions worthless.
It's terrible. But free speech in some circles is considered violence. It's just upside down. And that is especially true on college campuses. But there's no doubt that when you look at studies that the vast majority, I mean, overwhelming majority of faculties and administrations in this country at colleges lean left. Coming right back.
from the Seabrook Paint. Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. So Roger Waters supports Palestine. Please keep Pink Floyd off the playlist.
And Elton John's gay. What do you want? I don't care about their personal politics or personal lives. If they make good music, they make good music.
And
so I don't like Taylor Swift. It's not good music.
Right. I agree with you. I think all too often we let so much of that stuff influence our personal lives. I don't do that. Because I can tell you, as a business person, that relied on lots of people that had a wide range of views, I don't want to just pigeonhole myself into, these are only my customers here. I would certainly hope they wouldn't reciprocate to me, because I'd have been bankrupt. I'm speaking for lots of people here, not just me. I didn't want to make it about that, but the addressable market is huge, and we're pretty evenly divided in this country. If you only appeal to a certain segment of the market, but depending on what you're selling and what your business model looks like, that's probably not going to work out well. Michael Jordan probably had it best described when he said, Republicans buy shoes too, when he was asked about his political preferences. And I think that was a way of saying, I just play basketball. That's what I'd like to see. Just play basketball. Pink Floyd, just make music. I don't like when they get involved politically either, but I don't have enough time to run around and figure out where everybody stands that maybe I patronize as part of my life, and in this case, playing their music. So I get it. But, if that offended you, I guess so be it. But I think we'll continue to march on.
If I had to pick from a playlist of people I agreed with politically, it'd be a very short playlist.
And that's just it. And it's not just music. I mean, it crosses all facets of life. And I might disagree with someone, but I think I could rightfully say and confidently say Pink Floyd were pretty talented musicians, and they made music that you and I happen to enjoy. I'm with you. I don't happen to enjoy Taylor Swift's music, so we don't play that. But I guess that's our prerogative because we run the show here. That's what we get paid to do. Just pointing it out. And I appreciate that. It says it doesn't offend me, just pointing it out. That's fine. He says his ideology is anti-American. Okay. I haven't seen that, but he made pretty good music. That's the only thing I guess I would say about it. Rhino explaining common sense to people is the best part of the show. Well, number 2 behind him getting fired up. Keep up the good work. That's Kevin from Brandon. The Godfather says keep Bruce Springsteen off the playlist. No, we're not going to do that either. He's a lefty and sounds like he's taking a dump. He's awful. Okay. Some people may actually enjoy his music. So we have another person that is aggrieved today that sent us a rather lengthy text.
I think this person's perpetually aggrieved.
I think you're right. That says that they're considering quitting SuperTalk. Okay. I realize that you need a staunch MAGA conservative like myself who retains the intellect not to blindly follow every narrative espoused by our state and national Republicans like most SuperTalk radio personalities do. You need someone with intellect, experience, and common sense, like myself, to point out the occasional times when the favored narrative is factually wrong. I will continue to provide this service at no cost because I generally enjoy the program. You are welcome. No need to thank me. It's the least I can do. I don't think you're going to hear any thank yous from...
Is this the same towering intellect that couldn't figure out how to send a screenshot?
I think that's right. So I guess this person is saying that, let's see here, we do not possess intellect, experience, and common sense. Is that what that says?
Even though we just had somebody giving me kudos for explaining common sense.
Oh, that's right.
So now it's 1-to-1.
And I would also say this, and not that I think this is a popular, widely held opinion. I don't. I think this is an individual's opinion. But I would also say this, blindly following the narrative, you don't listen very carefully and closely. If anything, I struggle personally with calling out faults in the narrative or in policy coming from the right because I consider myself on the right. I think my viewpoints substantiate that I have espoused thousands of hours of. But when I see something that is either inaccurate or I may think's bad policy, I don't care who it's coming from. I'm going to talk about it. I don't blindly follow. I don't get anything out of that. I think that's what this person doesn't get. What benefit is it to us to, quote, blindly follow? You get paid extra for that?
No.
Has anybody ever told you you must blindly follow?
No.
Me either. And the day that happens, I'm out of here.
But there are some people that are convinced that every single day before the show, a guy with a tuxedo or a suit with a briefcase secured to his arm comes in and hands us our walking papers.
They couldn't be more wrong. The vast majority of the days you and I walk in the studio, which, by the way, is accessible without going through the rest of the offices here at the headquarters, we don't see anybody. Is that true?
Yeah, for the most part.
We don't see anybody. Maybe
Unless
Gary
I make
walking
a cup
through.
Of tea in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's it. And honestly, I'm grateful for that. But I also would say that the people here that run the place know that's what makes the content good. They know if they got involved and
micromanaging creativity is never a good way to
would be terrible.
The railroad.
If they dictated and orchestrated all that, it would be terrible.
Just look at Hollywood for the last decade.
Good point.
Studios micromanaging creativity have given you endless slop.
No doubt. Sharon and Brandon says, ignore that person jealousy. Oh, I promise we are. I just thought it would be interesting to share. And I thought about, is this something we ought to share? But because of the history of that individual, and as you and you peg it, because every time you see something like that show up, we always scroll back and say, okay, yeah, this is
that guy.
Right, exactly. And that's fine. The good news is you and I run into people across the state that enjoy the program. And that's what it's about. It's about enjoying, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to inform and entertain a bit, and hopefully we achieve that mission. But it ain't for everybody. We don't try to make it for everybody. That's impossible as well. So, unbelievable. You're not mentioning Epstein, so you were blindly following, says Thomas in Greenwood. I've stayed away from that, but I'm happy to talk about it. I'm not trying to avoid talking about the whole Epstein thing. The president seems to want to move forward and from that issue, and he posted a very long statement this morning on his Truth Social platform where he's going after people that are he calls them past supporters, that are demanding that there be a release and more action. It looks like that Representatives Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, who we interviewed last week, they've teamed up. Boy, if that's not some odd bedfellows, I don't know what is.
Well, that's after Ro Khanna added an amendment to the central bank digital currency bill, knowing Republicans were already against that, added an amendment to release all of the Epstein files with no redaction, nothing protecting the victims of sexual trafficking, just slapped that amendment on, and then the mainstream media the left wing of the Democrat Party have decided, oh, well, that just shows Republicans are trying to block it. And people that you would think had their heads screwed on straight bought it hook, line, and sinker.
It's I agree, and it's
like they haven't learned that the media is lying to you if their lips are moving.
So he and Massey have teamed up on some legislation that essentially would demand the release of the information available. The president did come to Attorney General Pam Bondi's defense yesterday, to the press, to the public. It appears that there are a lot of people that he calls his past supporters. I think what he means is people that supported him to get him in office. I don't think he means like they're no longer supporters. I didn't take that from his statement, from his language. But
if your entire worldview came from social media, you might believe it.
Well, that's probably true. But Thomas, of course, did. He was quick to share the long post by the president where he says, my past supporters have bought into this. I can't say the word the president did. We can't say it on the air, but it starts with a B and it has an S in the middle and a T at the end, and he's got that in quotes. Hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never, ever will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. So he wants to move past this whole Epstein thing. We're coming right back. The door's bumping us out.
For a limit.
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of
Steve Miller.
I don't believe anybody ever called him the gangster of love. Maurice, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, so it looks like Representatives Ro Khanna, the Democrat from California, and Republican Thomas Massey from Kentucky are teamed up to get the Epstein files released. They have co-authored, I guess it would be, legislation requiring it, and this is
with protections for the victims.
Yeah, and that was the problem with the amendment that Khanna inserted in the crypto bill, essentially.
Well, the Republicans were already voting against the bill before the amendment.
That's right. So
because it would basically establish a central bank digital currency, and that goes against the interest of Republicans and their constituents.
That's exactly right. Some sort of stablecoin crypto bill, I'd be cool with. You know, something else the president is looking at doing, this is for your financial situation, is an executive order that would allow investment in private equity firms in your 401k accounts. Right now, you don't have access to that. So why is that important? Because it's much higher risk investment, but much greater returns, naturally. So these private equity companies, of course, take in money from investors, and then they place that in firms that are not public for growth and acquisitions and other purposes. I mean, it is the way that entrepreneurship is often fueled, and lots of small companies end up being very large companies. It's called private equity, supposed to being publicly traded. So I support this. I think this would be great. The other thing that is getting some traction that I wish the Congress would do, and the president, I believe, would sign off on, is indexing capital gains to inflation. We went through that a little bit a couple of days ago, but the bottom line is you buy something, a security today, just call it stock, and you buy it today and you hold it for 10 years and sell it, and inflation's increased 20% over that 10-year period. The value of what you bought it for still remains the basis used to calculate the gain. So indexing, you'd increase the amount you bought it for by that same 20%, then calculate your gain, then pay taxes. Indexing capital gains, a concept that's been talked about. I think that's another provision that would drive economic growth. It's that kind of stuff. And people, again, need to be able to connect the dots. I know the second-order thinking is over the head of most Democrats, but in doing so, you would, in fact, see more investment, more risk-taking, more hiring, higher wages. I know they don't want to admit that, But that's where it comes from. Not passing stupid laws that say, you're going to pay this person this much. That doesn't do it. That's a failed policy, a flawed policy. Let's see here. So Tom says, wanting him to keep his promise makes me a past supporter. I don't think that's what the president's saying in the use of the words past supporter. I just think he's trying to say, hey, look, you guys got me here. You've been by my side. You've been supporting me. And now you're all mad at me about this, and I'm asking you to move past it. That's really what that long post says. Would you agree? In a nutshell.
Yeah.
He doesn't think that there's any value to the continuation of pursuit of this whole Epstein deal.
Well, you just got to take off the tinfoil hat for just a second and sit it out of sight. And remember that the Democrats were in charge running roughshod over the American government for 4 years under Biden. If there were anything damning against Republicans, don't you think it would have leaked out?
No
Everything
doubt.
else leaked out.
I think that's absolutely spot on. There's no way that would have been concealed. I just don't believe it if that were the case. And if there was truly a big old bombshell smoking gun there.
And on the same
could be wrong.
in the same vein, all of this was still under Trump the first time around, and if
Sure
anything
was.
were damaging to the Democrats, don't you think they would have used it?
I do. John from Hardeman County, Tennessee says, I like y'all's outlook on politics and the music that y'all play, and if I have any questions, Rhino or Gerard always explain things to me. Thank you, Gerard and Rhino. Appreciate the kind words there, John. It's our pleasure, and appreciate that. And yeah, we know and understand that the person's text we read earlier, who honestly didn't deserve for it to be read on statewide air, but I did anyhow, no big deal, is kind of an aberration, I believe. Why would you listen to something you disagree with, or you think people don't have intellect or experience or common sense? Why would you do that? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So what are the odds that the person will continue to listen? Quite high. And that's fine. No big deal. Well,
naysayers only really seem to leave when I really get after them.
I agree. But we see them pop up regularly after they threaten and tell us all that. And they'll show up again. We are out of here today. We thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with you again tomorrow in the Element Well studio. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.